Ethan's heart raced as the shuttle doors hissed open. He stepped onto the surface of the space station orbiting Zira, the planet his father had married into a new life. The air inside the station smelled faintly of metallic ozone, mixed with a strange sweet scent he couldn't identify. This wasn't Earth anymore. Every step he took echoed in the wide corridor lined with shimmering panels and softly glowing lights. He had spent most of his teenage years on Earth, living with his mother, who had passed away when he was 12. Since then, life had been quiet, predictable, and safe. But now, after his father's sudden marriage to a Zyrine woman named Myra, Ethan had been asked to live on this station. He had no choice. His father had insisted, explaining that it was for the family. Ethan had agreed reluctantly. Knowing he had no way to argue against interstellar travel regulations, when he finally reached the family's habitat module, a large chamber designed for comfort and security. He was greeted by Mira. She was taller than he expected, her features sharp but elegant. Her skin had a subtle shimmer that caught the station's lights. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed faintly as they observed him carefully. "And this is Ethan." Mira's voice was calm, but had a musical quality that made it feel almost alien. "Yes," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice steady. He hadn't expected her to be so different. Not just in appearance, but in presence. It felt as though the air around her hummed with energy. Before he could say more, the door opened at the far side of the chamber, and a figure stepped in. Ethan froze. Standing there was his new step-sister, Lyra. She looked human at first glance, but closer inspection revealed striking differences. Her skin had a faint, iridescent glow. Her hair shimmered with faint streaks of silver that seemed to move when she shifted. Her eyes were an unusual mix of colors, swirling between blue and violet, and she was staring at him with an intensity that made him feel exposed. "You're the human," she said finally, her voice calm but edged with suspicion. "The one father brought here?" "Yes," Ethan replied cautiously. "I guess I'm your stepbrother now." Lyra's eyes narrowed. She tilted her head, studying him like a scientist examining an experiment. "Stepbrother," she repeated. "Interesting." The tension was immediate. Ethan had expected awkwardness, maybe even curiosity, but the feeling in the room was stronger, almost electric. He realized quickly that living here would not be simple. Mira broke the silence with a soft laugh. "Don't be too hard on him, Lyra. He's just arrived." Lyra didn't respond. She simply turned and walked away, her movements fluid and precise. Ethan followed slowly, unsure of what to do. The habitat was surprisingly large, with several rooms arranged around a central open space. Holographic panels floated in midair, displaying star charts, energy readings, and other information he couldn't immediately understand. "This way," Mira said, leading him to a small room. "This will be your quarters. You'll have to stay here for a while." "Stay here?" Ethan asked, confused. "Yes," Mira explained. "The station has quarantine protocols for humans. It ensures your biology doesn't interfere with ours, and vice versa. You'll be monitored for the next few days," Ethan sighed. "I guess that makes sense. It's just a little strange." "Everything here is strange at first," Mira said, smiling gently. "You'll adapt." Ethan unpacked his few belongings, feeling the weight of isolation. He had expected some awkwardness, but being trapped in this alien environment, alone with people he barely knew, felt different. The metallic hum of the station, combined with the soft glow of lights and screens, made the habitat feel alive. By the evening, Ethan had adjusted to some extent. He was exploring the small habitat chamber when he noticed subtle changes in Lyra's behavior. She seemed restless, moving rapidly from one place to another, touching panels, observing lights, and occasionally letting out soft sighs. Her eyes shifted color rapidly, cycling between violet and blue. Ethan realized he didn't understand what was happening. He had read a little about Zyrine biology from his father's notes, but seeing it firsthand was overwhelming. Myra had mentioned something called a mating season. It's a natural biological cycle that occurred once every few Earth months for Zyrans. Ethan had assumed it was just a small change in mood or energy. Nothing dramatic. He was wrong. Lyra's movements became faster, her energy almost unbearable to be around. She was clearly struggling with the changes, and Ethan had no idea how to help. He stepped carefully, trying to avoid startling her. "Lyra," he said softly, "do you need help?" She stopped abruptly, turning to him with a glare. "Help," she repeated. "I don't need your help, human. Stay out of my way." Ethan nodded, realizing that approaching her directly might make things worse. Instead, he decided to observe from a distance, trying to understand the patterns of her behavior. He noticed that she would pace the room, touch panels at irregular intervals, and sometimes stop to stare at the windows. Where the stars of Zira stretched endlessly over the next few hours, Ethan learned to move quietly to avoid triggering her irritability. He experimented with simple distractions, projecting holographic patterns, playing music from the station's library, and even attempting small games with lights and energy crystals. Slowly, he noticed that Lyra's restlessness would decrease when she engaged with these objects. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Then, just as he began to feel a little more confident, an alarm blared across the habitat. A soft voice echoed through the chamber. Energy fluctuation detected in the living module. Containment protocols engaged. Ethan froze. Lyra's eyes were wide, glowing brighter than before. She rushed toward the source of the alarm, her movements faster than anything Ethan had ever seen. He had no choice but to follow, trying to keep up. The central chamber was now alive with lights and holograms, displaying alerts and warnings. Energy readings spiked erratically. Ethan realized that Lyra's biological energy was affecting the station's systems. He had heard of this happening during mating season, but seeing it firsthand was frightening. "Step back," Lyra shouted, her voice sharp but not hostile. "I can handle this." Ethan hesitated, but then remembered the small manual his father had given him about station systems. Using his human intuition, he began to manipulate the controls, stabilizing some of the energy readings. Lyra paused, surprised. You're helping?" she asked, her voice softer now. I think I can," Ethan said cautiously. "We just need to calm the fluctuations." Together, they worked. Ethan followed the manual, and Lyra focused her energy, controlling her pulses with effort. Slowly, the alerts decreased, and the lights stabilized. The chamber fell silent again. Save for the soft hum of the station, Lyra looked at him with something he had not seen before. Respect. She didn't speak, but her eyes softened, and she nodded slightly. Ethan felt a surge of relief. That night, as Ethan lay in his quarters, he reflected on the day. He had expected difficulty living with his new stepsister, but he hadn't anticipated the intensity of her biological cycles. He also hadn't expected to discover a way to connect with her. Even in a small way, he realized that survival here wasn't just about understanding the station or learning alien technology. It was about understanding Lyra, her species, and her unique challenges. He had to be patient, careful, and willing to adapt. As he drifted off to sleep, he heard the soft hum of the station and the distant murmur of Lyra moving through the habitat. Despite the challenges ahead, he felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to coexist and even become friends with someone so different from himself, and he knew, deep down, that the days ahead would test him in ways he could not yet imagine. The next morning, Ethan awoke to the soft hum of the station and a strange pink glow filtering through his quarters. The habitat's artificial sky simulated a Zyrian sunrise, soft and warm. But even the beauty of it could not calm the nervous flutter in his chest. Today would be another challenge. Lyra's energy had surged yesterday, and he had no idea what her next phase of the cycle would bring. He dressed quickly, choosing simple clothes that would allow him to move freely through the habitat. As he left his room, he noticed the central chamber was quiet. Lyra wasn't there. He let out a small sigh of relief, but it didn't last. A flicker of movement caught his eye near the observation windows. Lyra stood there, gazing at the stars, her eyes glowing faintly violet. "Morning," Alice said softly, careful not to startle her. Lyra turned her head slowly. "Human," she said.
Alex.
"You're still alive." Her tone was neutral, but Ethan detected a hint of amusement. "I plan to be," he replied with a small smile. For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the stars. Ethan had noticed that Lyra often calmed herself by observing the planet below. Zyra was beautiful, with swirling purple clouds, vast forests, and rivers that glowed faintly from bioluminescent algae. Humans rarely saw such colors, and Ethan found himself captivated by the view. "You like it?" Lyra asked quietly. "It's incredible," Ethan admitted. "I've never seen anything like it." Lyra's eyes softened. "Then stay quiet for a while," she said. "It helps me focus." Ethan nodded and moved to a corner, careful not to disturb her. Over the next hour, he observed her behavior closely. He noticed small patterns. She would pace the perimeter of the chamber, touch the energy panels lightly, and occasionally close her eyes, as if centering herself. These moments of calm were precious, for he knew the intensity could rise suddenly. After a while, Lyra spoke again. "Human. Yesterday you helped. Not many understand Zyrian biology, but you did." Ethan blinked. I just followed some instructions. It wasn't that hard." Lyra tilted her head, a hint of curiosity in her expression. "Not that hard? Most humans panic. You adapted." Ethan felt a small surge of pride. "I try to adapt." Lyra's eyes shifted to a soft blue. "Interesting." Despite the awkwardness of the interaction, a small bridge had formed. Ethan realized that if he could understand her patterns better, they might find ways to coexist without conflict. The day progressed, and Lyra's energy surged as expected. This time, Ethan was prepared. He had gathered several objects from the Habitat's library: holographic puzzle cubes, floating light spheres, and energy crystals designed for Zyrian manipulation. He placed them carefully in the central chamber and waited. Lyra entered the room, her movements fast and erratic. Her eyes glowed bright violet, and the air seemed charged with energy. Ethan held his breath. "Lyra," he said softly, "I brought something for you." Lyra paused, suspicion flickering across her face. "What is this?" she demanded, scanning the objects. "There. Toys," Ethan explained, choosing his words carefully. "For energy release. They can help you focus without hurting anything." Lyra narrowed her eyes, studying him. Slowly, she extended her hand toward a floating crystal. The crystal glowed softly and began to spin in her palm. Her movements became more fluid, her energy pulsing in rhythm with the crystal. Ethan watched closely. He realized that by giving her a controlled outlet for her energy, he could prevent habitat malfunctions. He introduced the holographic puzzles next, and Lyra began manipulating them with surprising skill. Her focus shifted gradually from raw energy to problem-solving, and the room's tension eased. For the first time, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment. He wasn't just surviving Lyra's cycles, he was helping her manage them. "Not bad," Lyra said finally, her voice softer than before. "You understand more than I thought?" "I'm learning," Ethan replied. Hours passed, and their interactions settled into a rhythm. Ethan discovered that Lyra's energy was strongest in bursts, but if she could focus it, the effects became manageable. He began predicting her cycles, preparing tools and distractions ahead of time. Lyra, in turn, grew calmer around him, tolerating his presence and even speaking occasionally. Then, mid-afternoon, the Habitat's alarms sounded again. Ethan's heart sank. Lyra's energy readings were spiking unexpectedly. He rushed to the control panel and noticed the cause: a minor power fluctuation in one of the Habitat's energy nodes. "Lyra," he called, "we need to stabilize the node, or the chamber could overload." Lyra's eyes widened. I can't," she admitted, her voice trembling. "The energy, it's too strong," Ethan thought quickly. He remembered how the Zyrian crystals had responded to controlled energy the day before. "We can do it together," he said. "I'll handle the panels if you focus your energy toward the crystal." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Together, they worked. Ethan manipulated the station's controls while Lyra channeled her energy into the crystal. The node's readings gradually stabilized. Sweat beaded on Ethan's forehead, and Lyra's hair shimmered wildly in the dim light. But eventually, the alarms stopped. Lyra sank to the floor, exhausted. I didn't think humans could help, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan offered her a hand. "We make a good team," he said. For the first time, Lyra smiled faintly. It wasn't a human smile exactly, but the gesture conveyed gratitude and trust. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. Despite the challenges, they were beginning to understand each other. The evening brought a moment of calm. Ethan and Lyra sat by the observation window, watching Zyra's glowing rivers wind through vast purple forests. Ethan realized that Lyra wasn't dangerous, her cycles were just a part of who she was. She was strong, intelligent, and capable of immense focus when given the right support. "You know?" Ethan said quietly, "Your planet. It's beautiful. I never imagined something like this existed." Lyra glanced at him, her eyes softening. "It is, but it's also dangerous. Many humans wouldn't survive here. I guess that's why I have to learn fast," Ethan said. "I don't want to cause trouble." Lyra nodded. "You're different. Most humans, they panic, they break things, they don't understand." She paused, then added softly, You understand? That makes you unusual." Ethan felt a surge of pride mixed with relief. For the first time since arriving, he felt like he belonged here, not fully, but enough to survive. Over the next few days, the bond between Ethan and Lyra grew. He learned more about Xarian biology, her rituals, and the patterns of her energy. Lyra, in turn, began to trust him, sharing small pieces of her life and her interests. They experimented with holographic games, energy manipulation puzzles, and even created a small artificial garden in the habitat, using Xarian soil and bioluminescent plants. Through these activities, Ethan discovered that humans and Xarians could complement each other. His problem-solving skills and adaptability helped Lyra channel her energy safely, while her physical abilities and unique perception offered insights he couldn't have imagined. Together, they became a team, not just siblings, but partners, navigating a complex, alien environment. One evening, as the simulated sun dipped below the horizon, Lyra turned to Ethan. "You know, human, I never thought I'd enjoy this time with someone else." Ethan smiled. "I'm glad you're enjoying it. I am too." Lyra's eyes glowed softly blue. "Then maybe we can survive this together," Ethan nodded. He realized that survival wasn't just about managing energy or avoiding accidents. It was about understanding each other, respecting differences, and working together. In a place so alien, trust was the most valuable tool of all. As night fell over Zyra, Ethan felt a cautious optimism. He had faced the chaos of Lyra's mating cycles, learned to cooperate with her, and discovered a new sense of purpose. Future was uncertain, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that the lessons he was learning here, adaptation, empathy, and teamwork, would shape him forever. The next morning, Ethan awoke with a sense of unease. Lyra's energy cycle had reached its peak. He could feel it even from his quarters, a subtle vibration in the air, a faint shimmer in the habitat lighting. As if the station itself sensed the intensity building, Ethan quickly dressed, making sure he was ready for whatever might happen. Today would test everything he had learned about Xarian biology. And more importantly, it would test the trust he and Lyra had built. As he stepped into the central chamber, Lyra was already there. Her movements were faster, almost nervous, and her eyes glowed a deep violet, pulsing with energy. She was breathing rapidly, her body shifting subtly as her instincts surged. Ethan held his breath. "Lyra," he said softly, "we can handle this. We just need to work together." Lyra glanced at him, her expression wary but not hostile. "Are you sure, human? Today? It will be harder than before," "I'm sure," Ethan said. "I've learned a lot. You and I can manage it." For a moment she hesitated, then nodded. She extended her hand toward the energy crystals they had used before. Her movements were quick, precise, and measured this time. Ethan knew he had to follow her lead and support her focus. He moved to the control panels, monitoring the habitat systems. Yesterday had been a warm-up. Today, the intensity was much higher. The station's energy nodes pulsed in response to Lyra's biological cycles, and one misstep could trigger an overload. Ethan's fingers flew over the holographic controls, adjusting energy flows, recalibrating containment fields, and preparing emergency stabilizers. Lyra's energy pulsed into the crystal, forming a visible aura that shimmered in the dim light. Ethan noticed how her focus improved as the crystal absorbed and balanced her surges. But even with the distraction, the intensity of her cycle created turbulence throughout the habitat. "Keep steady," Ethan called. "I've got the nodes under control, but you need to focus on the crystal." Lyra's eyes shifted from violet to blue and back again. I'm trying," she said, her voice strained. Hours passed as they worked in tandem. Ethan realized that understanding Lyra's patterns wasn't enough. They needed to predict them. When her energy spiked suddenly, he had to react immediately, rerouting power and reinforcing containment fields. Lyra learned to anticipate her own surges, directing them toward the crystal instead of letting them destabilize the habitat at one point. A particularly strong surge hit, causing the lights to flicker and the holographic panels to tremble. Lyra gasped, stumbling slightly. Ethan lunged, steadying her with a firm but gentle grip. "You're okay," he said. "We've got this. Just channel it into the crystal." Lyra nodded, taking a deep breath. Slowly, she regained control, her energy calming as the crystal glowed brighter. Ethan adjusted the controls, redirecting the excess energy safely into the station's power grid. The tension in the room eased. You're amazing," Lyra whispered, her eyes now a calm blue. "I didn't think humans could do this." Ethan smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. "We're doing it together." As the day progressed, Ethan and Lyra continued to manage her energy. They experimented with new techniques, adjusting the crystal's position, modifying holographic puzzles to absorb excess energy, and using small gravity shifts to help Lyra's body release tension. Every adjustment required coordination, timing, and trust. By midday, the intensity of her cycle began to wane slightly. Lyra sank to the floor, exhausted but calmer. Ethan knelt beside her, offering support. "You did it," he said softly. "You managed the worst of it." Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly silver. "No, we did it," she corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. For the first time, he truly understood the depth of Zyrian cycles not as a danger, but as a natural part of life that could be managed with patience, understanding, and cooperation. Over the next few hours, they rested together, sharing stories about their lives. Ethan learned more about Lyra's interests, her fascination with star patterns, her love of bioluminescent plants, and her curiosity about human culture. Lyra learned about Earth's human inventions, and Ethan's experiences growing up without a Zyrian family. Their bond strengthened, built on mutual respect and shared challenges. Ethan realized that the key to surviving on Zyra wasn't just knowledge, it was empathy, communication, and trust. As evening approached, a new challenge emerged. One of the habitat's main energy conduits began to flicker, signaling an unstable flow that could disrupt the entire module. Ethan rushed to the control panels, analyzing the readings. Lyra, despite her exhaustion, moved beside him, ready to help. "This is different from before," Ethan said. "The conduit might overload if we don't stabilize it quickly." Lyra nodded. "Then we do it together," she said firmly. They worked side by side, combining human problem-solving with Zyrian energy manipulation. Ethan rerouted the conduit's flow, while Lyra channeled her energy to absorb the excess. The process was intense. Sparks of light danced across the room as their combined efforts balanced the system. Finally, the alarms ceased, and the lights returned to a steady glow. Both of them sank to the floor, breathing heavily but triumphant. "We did it," Ethan said, a broad smile on his face. Lyra looked at him, eyes soft and bright. "Yes, we did it. You are more capable than I thought, human. I respect you." Ethan felt a surge of pride. Respect from Lyra was no small thing. She had been cautious, guarded, and unpredictable. That she now trusted him fully meant that he had truly proven himself in the quiet that followed. They watched the artificial night sky, Zyra's twin moons reflecting across the glowing rivers below. Ethan realized how much he had grown in just a few days. He had adapted to an alien environment, understood a species vastly different from his own, and formed a bond that went beyond biology or instinct. "You know," Ethan said quietly, "I never imagined I'd learn so much so quickly." Lyra tilted her head, a small smile forming. "Humans are more interesting than I thought. You adapt, you observe, you think differently. It is refreshing," Ethan chuckled. "I guess that's the point of surviving here, learning and adapting." "Yes," Lyra agreed. "And we have learned together." As the artificial night deepened, Ethan reflected on the journey. When he first arrived, he had felt trapped, alienated, and overwhelmed. Lyra's cycles had seemed unpredictable and dangerous. Yet through patience, observation, and cooperation, they had turned a potentially chaotic situation into an opportunity for growth. He looked at Lyra, who was now calmer, her energy glowing softly rather than surging wildly. She seemed at peace for the first time since he had arrived. Ethan realized that this peace wasn't just the end of her cycle, it was the beginning of a new understanding. Between their species, the final hours of the night were calm. Ethan and Lyra worked together to adjust minor energy flows in the habitat, ensuring stability for the coming cycles. Then they settled near the observation window, watching the stars and silently acknowledging the bond they had forged. "You know," Ethan said softly, "I never thought I'd consider a Zirian my friend." Lyra's eyes softened. "Friend. Yes, you have proven yourself worthy of trust. That is rare." Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. Not only had he survived the challenges of Lyra's cycle, but he had also gained respect, friendship, and understanding in a world far from Earth. As the station's artificial sky simulated dawn, Ethan felt ready for whatever lay ahead. Life on Zyra would never be simple, but he now knew the key to survival: patience, cooperation, and empathy. And with Lyra by his side, he felt capable of facing any challenge the alien world could throw at him. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel trapped. He felt part of something bigger, a family, and a partnership that transcended species. The future was uncertain, but he faced it with confidence, knowing that humans and Zyrians could truly work together, and as the first light of the simulated soon bathed the habitat in gentle warmth. Ethan and Lyra shared a quiet smile, ready to face the days to come together.